What's going on, guys? It's Stock Picks by Tim, and we are finally through that 3-day weekend, and the market is back open again. Now in this video, I'm going to look over the overall market. I'm going to look at small caps. We're also going to look at Bitcoin, and I'm going to bring up a stock that has earnings today. We're just going to see what's been going on. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and let's get right into this. Now first off, hopping over to TradingView, you'll see that we've got, I'd say, a relatively red day. You know, a couple outliers are green. We've got Amazon green, Google green. Otherwise, pretty much everything else is generally red. This isn't exactly the same case for small caps. You will see that, you know, I'm pulling up my phone real quick and most stocks are up. Now we do have a couple of the smaller cap names slightly down, but overall in general, I'd say they are overall up. So I would say today small caps are doing better than the overall market. Next up here, let's look at Bitcoin, and then we're going to look at a couple of small caps that I've been watching. And looking at Bitcoin, we have been recently pushing. And as I said in a recent YouTube short, I don't do YouTube shorts much, but I was at work and I wanted to mention it. But, you know, we broke out of that 30,600, and sure enough, we did keep pushing, pushed farther. We broke 31,600. We did find some resistance at about 31,800. We did break out of that, but it was quick to take it back and it just couldn't push past it. So I want to see us break 31,800. And then I'd argue that Bitcoin can continue to push further. And on the inverse, I want to see 31,200 hold. And worst case scenario, I want to see that 30,600 continue to hold. I don't want to see us break that. Otherwise, we're likely pushing back to the 28s. So looking at Bitcoin right now, I typically like to buy it when it's oversold, when there's a lot of fear in it. Yes, there's still a lot of fear. Yes, the price, I'd say, is still pushed down quite a bit. But I'm being patient on it. I have just been adding in the mid-20s, high 20s, and I'm going to wait on this. We'll see by the end of this week what I'm going to do with Bitcoin. If I'm going to add this week, likely I'll probably hold off on it this week and likely be buying next week. I might be buying at a higher level by then. I do like to kind of DCA, typically buy into fear. Sometimes you got to wait. And next up, continuing on the subject of Bitcoin, I did want to talk about my favorite Bitcoin miner real quick, and that's going to be Cleanspark. Now, I normally screen all the stats, all the fundamentals, stuff like that before I even mention a stock, but I did want to bring up that Cleanspark is looking really, really attractive. They've got a price to book of less than 0.6, price to sales under 2, a forward PE of under 14. When you're talking about a company like Cleanspark with a price to sales of 1.75, you know, this isn't a fully established company yet. This is still a growth company. You know, look at those revenues. Yes, our last earnings wasn't all that impressive. I admit that. Our revenue was pretty much what we had last quarter. But you also have to consider how much Bitcoin has fallen since then. Now, I would personally say the balance sheet on Yahoo isn't accurate. Now, when you actually go into the numbers, here's some things that Wall Street probably isn't looking at. First of all, they're likely not looking at total mining assets, of which Cleanspark has 326 million. And this includes prepaid miners and miners that aren't even here yet. And of course, also their Bitcoin. They do have 17 million in Bitcoin currently. But as I said, you know, revenue quarter over quarter, they did only have a 1% increase or a 0.4 million increase. But that is obviously due to Bitcoin's steep drop in price, you know, from the 40s when they were reporting their last quarter, 40s and 50s when they were reporting their last quarter. And now, you know, Bitcoin's holding around 25 to 35. So I do think potentially there will be opportunity for Cleanspark to continue to buy over the next 3 months, 6 months even. You do have to be aware, you know, as we approach the Bitcoin halving, we are getting closer and closer. We are roughly about 2 years away, a little under 2 years now. You know, this can only continue for so long where Bitcoin continues to be bearish. At least I would say. My personal experience with Bitcoin, what I've seen every halving, and typically how things work with supply and demand. You know, you look at less supply coming in. Of course, if the demand continues, the price will increase. If the supply drops and the demand drops with it, then there will be no difference. But I expect that the demand for Bitcoin will continue, if not increase over time. You know, one thing you got to think about with Cleanspark is it's definitely possible that this continues to have some issues over the next 3 months, potentially 6 months, especially if Bitcoin continues to stagnate, especially if Bitcoin pulls back more. You know, it's going to be a lot harder for them to impress on revenue when Bitcoin's only sitting at 30,000, 35,000, 40,000. Especially when you think about the last couple of quarters, them selling Bitcoin, you know, into strength, selling them at 42, selling it at 45, things like that. Now, I'm really curious when we get our mining update. We will be getting our mining update for Cleanspark, so you definitely got to keep your heads out for that one. It usually comes out anywhere from the 3rd to the 5th. They've been getting later and later with them. But that's going to be really interesting and really important to watch because it's going to tell us where they've been selling their Bitcoin if they have been. Okay, I'm really curious if they have been currently selling Bitcoin at these current prices, you know, in the 20s, even in the high 30s. Where have they been selling lately? because this mining update is going to be a precursor to the next earnings. It'll kind of give us an idea, at least in terms of their digital assets, in terms of their Bitcoin. You know, what are they mining per day? How much are they getting in a whole month? Times that by 3, and there's basically your quarter. Of course, that's not including the energy side of things, but that definitely gives you kind of a general ballpark estimate of where Cleanspark's going. Now, I definitely think Cleanspark can face some difficulty in the coming months, especially if Bitcoin doesn't move much. Now, overall, long term, I'm definitely very bullish on Cleanspark and Bitcoin, and I believe the trajectory is up and to the right. However, short term, it's anybody's guess, and if Bitcoin does continue to stagnate or even drop more and more, it's very possible that Cleanspark's next earnings is going to be very lackluster, but I will see that as a buying opportunity. And just be aware that, you know, there is that possibility that their next earnings can be even less impressive than this last one. There's definitely that possibility. Now remember, guys, at least in my opinion, Cleanspark, Bitcoin, it's a long game. Short term, it's anybody's guess, and short term, honestly, I'm a bit bearish. So I will be keeping cash on the side and continue to be ready to buy Cleanspark, buy Bitcoin into any weakness. Now, looking at Cleanspark on the chart, you'll see that it really hasn't recovered all that much. You know, we had that max fear that 12th of May where everything sold off, everything was at its lowest point, just about every stock across the board that I've looked at least. You know, you're talking about Cleanspark under $5, now it's sitting at about $6. I mean, it really hasn't ran up all that much. Sure, that's a pretty decent percentage gain, but when you zoom out, I'd argue that we're not going to see these prices anytime soon. That was just too much money pumped into the market. We are not going to see this. Don't even think anytime in the midterm, short term, that Cleanspark's going to see the 30s. I don't think it is. It's going to take quite a while. We're going to have to be patient. But those that are patient, those that wait, will be greatly rewarded. I really do believe that. And as I've said before, you know, Cleanspark under $10 I think is a screaming deal. Right now the market cap is sitting under 300 million. They have total assets roughly in the 500 million range. They have had profitable quarters. They've had unprofitable quarters. Moving forwards, it really does depend on Bitcoin's price. And it's simple as that. Now, next up, I wanted to talk about Chargepoint. I have talked about it a lot lately, but I did want to remind you guys, earnings is coming out later today, and that might be the reason this is kind of pulling back a little bit. I did have a feeling that, you know, coming up to earnings, we would have a little bit of fear. Last week, we did see a huge run on Chargepoint. I mean, we're talking about Chargepoint was at $10, now it's sitting at almost 14, and that only happened in a matter of 2 days. But same thing with Chargepoint, max fear, the 12th of May, you know, sitting at $8.50, now we're already at $14. I still see it as a great time to add, but be aware, earnings is definitely going to decide the trajectory of this one. If their revenue surprises, if their EPS surprises to the up or downside, that's going to decide the direction for Chargepoint. I definitely believe in this one for the long term, and if you guys are curious where you can listen to the earnings, I will upload a cleaned, edited version of it, or you can check out Chargepoint's Investor Relation IR, and it'll be a webcast here on the events page, events and presentations. Very easy to find, and that'll give you access to the earnings call. It'll give you a lot of key information that a lot of people aren't going to be listening to. And another thing regarding Chargepoint that just came out that I did want to mention is JPM believes the market bottom is near because corporate buybacks are absolutely skyrocketing. But they do mention Chargepoint as a great one to get into right now with how much it has dropped. They also mention Nvidia. They also mention Magellan. Never heard of Magellan, but Nvidia, Chargepoint. I'm really interested in Nvidia too. I need to look into that one. I'm definitely more bullish on something like AMD, something like Indie. Definitely think Nvidia is interesting now at its current price though. So Bill Pearson of Jpmorgan did give Chargepoint an $18 price target. I think it deserves higher than that. I do think short term it can easily hit that price without fail. I do think so. But it's definitely great stuff, and I will leave you guys a link below for it. So I did want to quote this. In the latest sell-off, JPM estimates 3 to 4 times higher buyback executions than the trend. So this is big. It shows that these corporations see value in their stocks, and who knows them better than themselves. That's it for you guys today. Just a simple, short and sweet video. Make sure you stay tuned for Chargepoint. I'll be covering it later today. Definitely excited to see where their revenue is going to be, see how their EPS does, and see any kind of little details in that earnings call. Thanks as always, guys, and I'll see you next time.